Hi, my name is Don Meyer, the Director of Training with the Erie Bearings Company. Today, we're going to talk about sensors and specifically cord sets that go along with the sensors. Let's look at a sensor that is cabled versus one that has a quick disconnect. A lot of times a manufacturer will offer a similar model in a cabled version or a quick disconnect. Why one over the other? The advantages of the cabled sensors is usually they're a little bit more cost effective. Historically, people thought that this provided a higher IP rating, and again, in the past that may have been the case. Today though, the quick disconnect versions are becoming a lot more popular. They bring a couple things, they have a couple advantages about them. The change out, if there's a failure, is a lot quicker. You're not having to interface with wires. You simply disconnect and reconnect the sensor cable to that. So it's simply a matter of threading it on or unthreading it. Cabled sensors have, for the most part, an IP rating of 67. And historically, the quick disconnect versions, people shied away from those because of this connection point. There used to be a problem with water or maybe cutting fluids permeating that connection. They would tell you to put pipe thread on there, and I would still tell you to do that, but I will tell you this: in today's world of manufacturing, the cabled or quick disconnect versions of sensors have the same IP67 rating as their counterparts there. So what was a problem in the past no longer exists. So we have a variety of cables here, quick disconnect cables. And it may look like we have dozens of different types, but in reality we have a few. We have this Pico or Nano, and that's also referred to as an M8 by some manufacturers. That really is calling out the same type of connection. It's your smallest one, and there are 3-pin and 4-pin varieties of those ones. Then you have your MicroDC. MicroDCs are interesting, and we'll talk about these a little bit more. Even though there are 3-pin, 4-pin, 5-pin, also called 3-wire, 4-wire, 5-wire, it's the same mold amongst those, and we'll talk about the advantages of having a common keyed connector on there. The MicroDC are sometimes referred to as the M12s. Right? A real point of confusion that I totally understand is there's a MicroAC variation of that. Right? They still use the term micro, but it's a little bit different in size. This is actually a 1/2 inch instead of an M12 or 12 millimeters. Not much difference between 12 millimeters and a 1/2 inch, but significant in that it's a different size connector there. And by design, we want AC cables to be different than DC. So that was an intent. And then the last size what we have are the minis. The minis are referred to as 7/8 inch. So you have the minis, the micros, and then the nanos or the picos. So you have 3 different families. Let's look at the families one at a time. Your pico or nano, there's really just a couple variations of these. There's either a 3-wire or a 4-wire. They are keyed differently, so you pretty much have to, if it calls out you need a 3-wire pico connector, then that's what you're looking for. You cannot substitute a 4-wire Pico connector for that. And I say that because when we look at the next family, as I mentioned before, the micro family, and we're going to talk specifically about the MicroDC family. I have a couple of MicroDC cables in front of me, and I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but we'll give you a close-up later. They are molded and keyed the same. However, one of them has 3 wires coming out the end, and the other has 5 wires. And there's a confusion, I understand, when you're looking at these. They'll tell you it's a 3-pin, 3-wire, maybe a 5-pin, 4-wire. I really just always refer to the number of wires. I need so many wires coming out to connect that sensor, to the piece of equipment. That said, I will tell you that your 3-pin MicroDC, there's a 4-pin and a 5-pin. If I was only going to stock one of them, I would stock a 5-pin, because what you have different is 2 additional wires, but the same 3 wires that you would need for a 3-wire sensor are found here in the same pin position as they're called out, with the same color jacket. So you can, what I'm saying is, you can use a 5-wire MicroDC cable on a 5-wire sensor, which typically are your photo sensors, your ultrasonic sensors, not so much your inductive or capacitive. But you can use it on a 5-wire sensor, a 4-wire sensor, or a 3-wire sensor. You simply look at the common 3 wires are your blue, your brown, and your black. If you were hooking this up to a 3-wire DC sensor, you would just cut these wires possibly. So you can kind of consolidate your inventory by considering a 5-wire sensor, and that only works in the MicroDC family. We talked about a MicroAC. We'll give you a close-up to show you. The MicroACs are actually keyed very different. All right, so again, we by design, they by design key these differently. The DC ones will have a single key. The AC ones, you will see a 2-key system there, so that we don't mistakenly use the wrong cable or hook it up to the wrong sensor. And then when you go into the minis, it kind of plays out like the Picos or the Nanos. If there's a 3-wire, it's keyed one way. If there's a 4-wire, they key it differently. Right? So there are a close look at the different pinouts and configurations. Pay close attention. Remember what I said about the MicroDCs. The most common sensors are your MicroDCs. So now you have a little bit of understanding about 3-wire, 4-wire, or 5-wire. What do I need? Get the minimal amount of wires, but don't be afraid to use a 4-wire cable or a 5-wire cable on a 3-wire sensor. It will key the same, the color codes are the same, the pin locations are the same. You'll see here that we've got different color of jackets here. The color of the jacket's really not of much importance here. The bigger thing to talk about is PVC versus PUR. In general, PVC is a little bit more cost effective, a little bit more flexible. Where it would be weak would be its ability to withstand certain chemicals and maybe heat conditions. So if you have chemicals or high heat or maybe even welding, you can go up to different jackets. PVC would be my go-to jacket, but if I had a lot of oils or chemicals, I would consider maybe PUR. Look at the minis, which go to this STOOW type of jacket, or there's even special silicone jackets that are great for high temp and maybe even weld immune situations where the slag won't stick to it. Quick thing to point out, most of your cables are going to be 2 meters long, but we can give you 5 meters. You can get custom lengths if you would like. There's also a type that's called a pigtail. All right, so here's kind of what am I? Am I a cabled sensor or am I a quick disconnect? Kind of gives you the advantages of both. You know, say this was in an area where you would like to use quick disconnect, that's what you go to, but you can't reach there to turn it on and off. That's maybe where I would go with a pigtail. You can bring this out to the area where you can quickly do the interchanging of it. So don't overlook the pigtail for certain applications. Another type of cable to point out are extension cables or double-ended cables. Right? They're called extensions because they kind of do what an extension cord does. It gives you the ability to go longer distances. You can get them in male to male versions, male to female versions, depending on what you're going to do. Sometimes you may, instead of having someone go into an enclosure to undo the wires, you may want to have a port out there that you would plug an extension cable into, and then on the other end you connect to the sensor. So that's something to keep in mind. It really keeps you in a safe zone and doesn't force you to open up an enclosure to replace something. Again, and it would be a quicker change out. You have the ability to make your own cords as well. You can buy just the connector ends and make your own custom lengths. and still maintain that IP67 integrity. And another feature that you'll find on the Cordsets, and I believe it's throughout the family, whether you're going to the Pico or Nanos up to the Minis, is you can get it with an LED in the cable. So think about that sensor that's buried in the equipment, and you love to see that LED that tells you whether it's on or off, sensing something or not. What do? So you can find cables that have LEDs inside them to give you that indication. So as I was saying, they do key the MicroDC, which are your M12s, and the MicroAC, which are your half-inch, that subtle difference, differently. But there is a common color coding amongst wires, as I was pointing out before, with the 3-wire versus 5-wire. 3-wire DCs, your browns, your blues, and your black. It's universal wiring. If this doesn't clue you in as a difference, the wire color would be a difference as well, which is universal. So this is your AC. I don't know if you can see that we have a red with black, red with white. Those of us who do house wiring know black and white reference your ACs. We have a green here for a ground. So what appears to be a confusion, if you look at it, as you start to try to connect stuff and wire it, you'll see the differences. So a lot of different cables. We understand the confusion. If this didn't help clarify everything, what I suggest is you call Erie Bearings, ask for the motor control specialist, and say, I've got questions about cables, let us help you out.